I'm Clint, and welcome to Swatches Art Livestream number 108. I am joined in this episode by Nito. Welcome in, Nito.
Hello everybody. It's been a while. I'm glad to be here again.
Yeah, our schedule gets changed up a little bit here for the holidays, but if you are new to the channel or new to this live stream, in this episode, the main content will be reviewing the submissions that we have for the art challenge. It is a fairy tale based challenge called the First Star to the Right. But before then, we're going to just take a couple of minutes to go through some announcements, double check that the stream is nice and sound, we're not dropping frames or anything like that. So we'll go through a couple of announcements and then we'll start looking at some artwork. If you're unfamiliar with swatches, my name is Clint Kierley. I am a professional illustrator and art educator. Nito, you're not really an art teacher, but you're an artist, illustrator. How would you describe yourself?
Yes, I guess so. I am an artist. I've been a lifelong artist, and I am really into what you do here on the channel, which is fantasy illustration and that kind of a genre. So I do have some stuff to say about it. Maybe not as much experience as you, but I think it's always nice to have different perspectives on art
Absolutely.
pieces.
Yeah, in different styles. I have a feeling that perhaps your style is actually going to be closer to what this challenge actually needs than mine would be. But okay, let's
Hmm.
take a look at the chat. Yeah, we already have some people in. Obviously, you're in here. Marco, Kamui, Benjamin, Kong Lee, Matthew. Good to see everybody. And it has got to winter, which means I can wear more layers. So I'm wearing my hat and my vest now. It just gets too hot to do that during the summer. Uh, if you are not aware, illustrating commissions the professionals process, which is the art class I created back in the summer, is now up and available on Skillshare. The link is in the description below. This is my most thorough take on the illustration process, particularly when you're working from an outline. So I get a lot of questions, and we get to see a lot of the same things here on the channel, especially with the art challenges, of people not having a good workflow. And they are just sort of trying to intuit their way through the creation process and then not sure how to approach it. When do you get references? How do you do value studies? How do you do color studies? When do you do those? And this information is I've put all of it together into this material, illustrating commissions professional process. Uh, in your own creation process, how do you find the workflow importance wise? I mean, did you used to always use a workflow, Nito, or did you, start doing that, or what sort of results do you see from that?
Oh, to me, I mean, I don't want it to sound too, oh, wow, it's night or day or whatever, but before I actually started to find my own workflow and sort of start to commit to something that works for me,
Mm-hmm.
I barely finished pieces.
Yeah.
And I was still thought that I'm like, oh, I'm going to make a career in art and I want to do this and that. But since I didn't have a structure to it, doesn't have to be a super strict structure, but since I didn't even have half of an idea of how to go about something, again, barely finished pieces. And so
Yeah.
it would just be piles of sketches and ideas and things. But
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm committing to something, I find what works from different artists, grab a little bit from your workflow as well, Clint. Yeah, it's just, it makes it so much easier to follow through with a project and see it to the end. So I think yeah, you can find it in the class in very amazing bite-sized pieces.
Mm-hmm.
How Clint goes about it. So go check it out, you
Yeah,
guys.
and absolutely, you adapt it. My style
Yeah.
of approaching the images in the process is not going to be the same for everybody. But if you don't have one, you can try this one and figure out what parts about it work for you. And then you adapt that into your process. I think you make a good point that not finishing pieces, I hadn't really thought about it in terms of that, but looking back, yeah, there was a lot of images
Yeah.
that I didn't ever finish, that I'd get into them and I'd have that idea, but I didn't know how to get that idea and turn it into a finished image. Just a little promotion, a little extra promotion on that. If you follow that link, you want to watch the class. It is a little over 3 hours of content divided into 5-ish minute segments. And if you sign up for Skillshare, you do get 2 weeks free, 14 days of free premium. You can quit, cancel within 14 days, and you don't get charged anything. So if you want to check it out, see what it's like, what platforms are like as well, feel free to do that. If you want to join the community, the most active place right now is probably the Discord. So you can see the link there. I think I have a link below as well for that. And if you want to schedule an hour consultation with me, we can talk about your art progress, your career, education questions, problem solving image, any of those sorts of things. You can do that on art-mentor.com. My schedule will be a little more spotty as we're getting into holidays, but you can still find some spots there to schedule if you want. Any other topics come to your mind that you would want to toss out to anybody?
Not really, but I think on the Skillshare class, I think also if you sign up with that link, I think it shows like your support for Swatches because it lets Skillshare know that you're there
Yes.
because of this class. So if I think if you appreciate what Clint and the community is doing here on the channel, I think just signing up that way, even just to show a little bit of support, uh, could be nice.
Yeah,
Um,
if you do sign up from that, if you sign up through the link I have below, I do get a cut from that direct sign up. Even if
yeah,
you don't stay for
yeah,
the 2 weeks, even if you leave, I still get a cut. They still
yeah.
give the creators cut. But generally speaking, and this is one of the reasons I actually put it on Skillshare. I was looking at
Mm,
different platforms to try to maybe find a new home for some of my content. And Skillshare is interesting because the creators make income on the watch time. So if
yeah,
somebody's watching it, that's when you make money. So you're not having to try to sell people on every new thing. It's just, hey,
yeah.
if they watch it, and then that's where you make money. Anyway, I covered this process. I don't want to spend too long and talking about this, but I put a lot of time into this, and it's the most thorough stuff that I have out. Um, I go through this workflow: rough sketches, refined sketches, colors, concepts, painting process, finished image. So that's why that class is about.
Yeah.
Now, just as a hey, I saw this thing yesterday and I thought it was cool, and I'm gonna share it with you guys. There is no sponsorship or anything. There's no connection between me and them. Uh, it is just this Kickstarter looking glass portrait. I mean, look at this thing.
Yeah.
It is a desktop 3D hologram that you can see
Yeah.
from any angle, and it's just cool. You can
Yeah.
do photographs that have depth perception, or you can use the program to try to sense what the depth is. You can use 3D models from like Maya or other 3D programs in order to bring up your 3D model on the hologram thing. Where is it down
I
here? Somebody did like a ghost shell. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, there's some characters in 3D.
So like Sketchfab.
Mm,
So I
that was
I
cool.
don't really splurge that much, but I had to sponsor it. I mean, like, I want one that's just cool.
Yeah.
So, if you guys are interested, go check out Looking Glass on Kickstarter. There you go.
Cool. They've already super funded, so
Oh, yeah.
as one would expect.
Yeah, where are they at today? Just by curiosity here. They were trying to get 50,000 and they got 1.5
Yeah.
million,
Yeah.
and they still have over a month to go.
Yeah. I mean, to be
Oh.
honest, the way they're presenting it, I think attribute it to the success because I think just the video and stuff is just very well
Yeah.
just presented overall. So
I mean, I'm not a 3D person, but I mean, like, I don't use 3D programs and stuff,
Yeah.
but I just think it would be cool just to have them on desk and play with.
Yeah.
Okay,
I just
so, oh,
drew
sorry,
cat.
go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna say something weird. I was just gonna say I would just put like funny pictures of cats or something on it, just to, just to have on my desk. That would be pretty
You
funny.
know, I wonder if you could do like your artwork and divide it into layers and do like a 3D
Oh.
version of your artwork.
Oh, you
That
know,
would
like
be
those
neat.
rulers that you can get as a kit that like it's like some animals and they're running and you can like tip it one way or the other
Mm-hmm.
and you see the animal running the horse or something.
Projected onto a 3D model.
That would be cool.
Okay, so this art challenge is called First Star to the Right. It is actually the challenge slash class assignment that is on this project right here. This class on Skillshare has the outline for this project. What I was trying to do is create a challenge that would be similar to what is shown in the class. And that's what these people are going through. The quick outline is this. Um it is a mix up of multiple fairy tales, includes the main characters Alice of Wonderland, Peter Pan of Neverland, and Bagheera the tiger. Not the tiger. He's not the tiger, he's the leopard. Bagheera the leopard from the Jungle Book. And the three of them are teaming up in order to stop this new sort of dark malice that is messing around with the other worlds and reshaping things. I had a section here of different scenes that the artist could choose to illustrate from. And that is what they're choosing from. And I have a little breakdown of what they look like. It's the general look of each character. Mainly, Alice and Peter are both about 13. She has the classic dress, but she does have Mad Hatter's hat. Peter has a Hook's rapier sword because Hook's already been swallowed by TikTok. And Bagheera, of course, is an adult Black Panther, and he is scarred a bit from his fight with Shere Khan Tiger. So that is the outline, and now we're going to jump into taking a look at the submissions. We only have 3 submissions. I knew that numbers were going to go down with the holidays, so this will be a fairly short stream. We're going to start though with Ruth, just because that's the one that came up when I opened it. A couple of comments said, first time participating. Well, Ruth, I am glad that you participated, and it's good to have you enter in. I didn't have enough time to refine my concepts as I've only participated 2 days prior to the first due day. So she started on Wednesday. Okay. I was struggling mostly on how to make the composition work for the concept I picked. I feel like it's too crowded and there's no space for the title. So for this concept, it is about the 3 characters falling. And they're in this free fall, and around them are these playing cards. And instead of the normal suits of hearts, diamonds, spades, that they have instead skulls and keyholes and hourglasses. And there's one special card that's a golden card that has a quill and inkwell because that's important with the story. And this is her rendition of it. And one of the biggest things that I talk about in the class is iterations. So you want to do multiple versions of everything. You pick the best one, and then you move that to the next stage and do multiple versions of that. And you keep going with this process. So I feel like she's got a good start here, but like she said, pushed on time and didn't get a lot of iterations to go. So we'll see what we can do as far as where do you go from here, how do you get the most out of it, and then we will move on. I'm going to zoom up here on the top left to look at the concept. She's got the 2 different directions here on both of the characters here. Now, my first feedback, and I'll get your input here as well, Nito. My first thought is you're already trying to go too defined with this. We've got the rendering of all the features and the expression. You've got folds. You've got all the hash marks for all the laces. At this stage, the first thing we want to do is stay much rougher. We want to look at the general composition. Just where are the arrangements of the figures? What kind of pattern is it creating? And we can work with those basic shapes of that composition very quickly. And you could do a dozen of those within an hour. And then you pick the best one and you could clean it up to something like this. Maybe she did, but I'm not seeing that. What is your thoughts about this stage as far as just the kind of composition and composing of the scene?
Yeah, one thing you could try out for sure, and it's kind of jumping off of what Clint was saying, is treating them as sort of just their not necessarily their silhouettes, but like simple mannequin like, with some
Mm-hmm.
of their defining sort of like the hat and these things put on top. I think that could help you in just again iterating and changing them around and be like, oh, what would happen if this was overlapping this, or if we saw Peter being closer to us to show more depth or something of the sort. um if these two that are on the top left are the thumbnails or the first iteration sketches, I think maybe something you could try, Ruth, would be working smaller, because I feel like these were worked on a little bigger than perhaps time would have allowed you to.
Yeah.
Like, especially knowing you had 2 days, is like I would have just worked. But again, this is workflow, and to each their own sort of in what works for them. But
Mm-hmm.
I think you could have arrived with the time frame that you were given at a better place with more stuff to back you up by having worked like smaller and just
Mm-hmm.
simple lines.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good point. Is when you do work smaller, it can be either visually smaller or if you need to reduce the pixel size to help.
yeah,
That's important. It, stay back. Like
yeah,
I don't ever zoom up on this stage. I mean, I don't pull up to anything like this size if I'm working on composition. I mean, I'm
hmm,
staying way back here with composition sketches because I don't want to be even tempted to try to get in kind of detail-y stuff. So for this stage going forwards, and like we said, she got she got in 2 days what you were supposed to be doing in 2 weeks. So
yeah,
we understand that.
yeah,
We're just saying that if you had time. Now, going forwards, I think that this all has the general idea of what we're looking for. Everything's kind of free floating. Okay, cool. But we want to find some sort of pattern to it. Some sort of symmetry or flow that we can follow. And I would be thinking about it like this. I'm going to just be using these frames as what would be the frame for the image. Okay? Just to be the right ratio. Um, First thing we're going to do is actually put in a block for the title. You said I didn't leave time for the room for the title. I don't know where the title would go. Actually, start by just saying this is where my title is, right?
hmm,
And that way, it is on there before you even draw. Or if you want it at the bottom, that's fine too. Make sure that you got it there. So some of these will be at the bottom, some of these will be at the top to change it up. Now, I'm looking at this one over here, and I'm feeling like it's almost working in a loop pattern. So, okay, what kind of different patterns could we create? I think the simplest would be your circle. So that would be you're trying to arrange things to follow this kind of shape. We already have Bagheera up here, right? And he's curving around. In this case, you don't want the tail doing that because that doesn't follow the pattern. It'd be more accurate or more advantageous to follow this. He's going to be spiraling in, right? Then maybe here we have the top hat, right? And that can be floating off of her head, but she's going to be coming this way. I kind of like this dress coming up. That's a nice big shape. dynamic kind of uh, triangle. So we could have her like this, and then Peter is already kind of doing this sort of thing, but almost looks like he's laying down. And of course, Peter can fly, so it doesn't need to necessarily look like he's out of control. But you want to arrange this, you're doing this in such a way that it all sort of follows that pattern. And then what you do is you break it up with your cards. And remember with the cards, we want to utilize them to create a better sense of depth. Right? So we could have one card up here in the foreground so it's nice and large and you can see it. And then you've got the other cards, some of them going to the background that are nice and little. And overall, you're just trying to put them in places where it's going to create a flow around the character. How is that how you would kind of approach it, or what would be your idea, Nito, of kind of working
Y-
that out?
Yeah, I mean, definitely thinking of different kinds of patterns to introduce is good for iteration.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can choose the one that you feel works best. On the topic of patterns, again, I would also try, which is something that caught my attention, to do some sort of a triangle. Not a perfect
Mm-hmm.
triangle, but I don't know the word in English. Is it obtuse? No. Ooh, perhaps. Um, just like a triangle that's more broken up than just your perfect equilateral triangle.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and and sort of using, because again, putting one focal point in each of the points of the triangle being, for example, because right now in the sketch I see the three heads for the three characters are just lined up in one line on the
Yes.
left side of the image. So I think that by sort of grab using those as focal points and putting them in different parts of triangles, having the triangle be tilted to different sides or something to fit in the composition could also work, because that's you kind of want to balance it out in a way by having not the because right now, again, words hard. Okay, here goes. Um, right now, the three characters to me are kind of, they look like a sandwich in a way.
Yeah.
It's like the three
Even if
layers, they're all to the side.
Yeah, even if you just got Peter and like reversed him,
Yeah,
or
yes,
actually reversed her, one or the other, so that their heads go, back and forth as it
yeah,
goes down.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be
Just
better.
yeah, something like that. I get, yeah, just like Peter with his head to the other side, just so they're not all lined up perfectly.
Hmm.
Especially because you want to give the idea of they're free falling. It's kind of chaotic in a way. You don't want them to be falling perfectly like a sandwich through the rabbit hole or what have you. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so if you did more of kind of that sort of pattern with where their heads are located, that would be a more pleasing symmetry to it. Something else that you can do is think about how they are relating to each other. They're not
yeah.
just all falling, maybe they're interacting. One of my thoughts would be, well, could we have, let's say the title's at the bottom here, could we have Peter, who can fly, actually carrying Alice, right? So they're in
Mm,
free fall, but maybe Alice is like here and she's, trying to hold on to her top hat. But Peter's kind of got his arms around her because he's trying to slow her down a little bit, but her dress is doing that sort of thing, right? Then Kitty is sort of wrapping around because Kitty's just in a free fall, and there we've got interaction. We actually develop a little bit of, oh, he's looking out for her, right? Or or are they both trying to hold up Bagheera? Or
yeah,
is Peter up here and his arm is down and he's trying to hold on to her? That sort of thing. Or is Peter just like, being a smart aleck and he's just kind of
mm,
floating out there, oh yeah, well, this is fine, and she's, spazzing out, right? Any
yeah.
one of these things kind of gives you an idea of the relationships, and there's an interplay between the characters. So,
Yes. No, I agree completely. Especially know in the brief, it's like it's all about these character dynamics and how you're relating characters from different franchises are coming
Mm-hmm.
together. I think playing off of that idea, if you wouldn't mind, you could have Peter sort of holding her up, or you could have it like he's floating up again, and she's just like trying to reach out to him with one hand or something, and he's
Yeah.
like trying to reach out or something of the sort. Could be pretty good as well.
Or is there something funny about, is the hat making her fly? Is she like holding the hat almost like an umbrella and kind of floating down with
Mm,
it?
yeah.
That sort of thing. Um, or could they be facing the other way? Could they be belly down and they're kind of falling head
Oh,
first, right?
yeah.
You're doing that sort of thing. So, maybe Alice is doing this, and then the dress is blowing up around there, and then she's got her hand up there on the top hat, right? And then Peter,
Yeah.
he can be watching, or he can be just floating down here, right? So you've got to, and the other thing is kind of you're picking which one do you want to be centered, because you got three of them. One of them kind of needs to be the center one. It looks like you're going with Alice as kind of the central one, and that's
Yeah.
fine. I mean, there's no issue with that. But figure out which one's sort of the anchor one, and then you want to get the other two to create a symmetry with that one.
Yep. I mean, and just quickly going back to the workflow idea, this is why the workflow is there, because this is the specific moment where you get to experiment like this, and
Mm-hmm.
you get to sit down and be like, okay, what can I do with this? It could be this and that and this and that, and just don't be afraid to again be like, oh, what would their dynamic be? Ask yourself these kinds of questions to see if you can prompt some ideas to come out. And did you see how Clint is sort of just kind of like as if you were just writing down ideas for whatever it is. It's just scribbling down positioning of things, because then you
Mm-hmm.
can go in further and put a little bit more time into it.
Yeah, this early stage isn't even about the sketching. This is
Yeah.
still, it's just visual brainstorming. And I'm trying to think through a lot of the variables. Well, what do I have to play with? Who are these characters? How are they interacting? What sort of pattern can I make? And I want to explore all of those things for a while before I even end up choosing which one. So
Hmm.
you've got 2 more weeks, Ruth. And for this, I personally don't need to see a finished image at the next entry. So you don't need to necessarily take this from this stage to everything being completely finished. Uh, do what you need to do with the time that you have available, and even if you don't get the colors, even if we just get a good composition and we get black and whites on it, hey, that's fine. I'm happy with that. You're working with limited time here, so I just quick feedback on that. I do like the idea of the background that you have down here. There's some lovely colors. I think it has that right sort of magical feel to it. So we can totally make that happen. The other thing that I would be looking at is utilizing the cards in a way that creates maybe a pattern. This is kind of like what they do with the leaves in a lot of animated shows and illustrations. Well, like the leaves all sort of create a pattern. So you have all the cards almost following an order, right? And the cards are kind of going around them, and they're not just randomly placed. They're creating curves. They're making a compositional arrangement that balances the characters, or you've got big ones in the foreground because they're closer, not that they were actually bigger. Then they get smaller as they go back, thereby helping tell us the depth of the scene and the sizes of elements. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up there on Roos. Now we're going to look at George. I'm going to use that pronunciation. I know that you can pronounce that a couple of ways.
I was about to say something else, but yes, yes.
I think it could
I
be
would have said
Jorge as well.
yeah. I was gonna say Jorge because he says he's from Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay.
So Yeah.
So for another person, first time participating, hey, good to have you. Welcome, welcome. I've been watching on YouTube for a long time. This is what I came up with using the challenge descriptions. I was planning on giving the characters light and shadow, but I got sick and stopped working on the piece. Sorry to hear that. Hope you're feeling better.
Get well soon.
Music, like the third one with the crazy colors, but I'm open to suggestions and changes. I plan to put the book title on the bottom with the character. Okay. So he's gone through a lot more variations. I think we're going to just start over here on the left and take a look at the compositions. Now, I think that's the first thing that I have to point out is there isn't really much changes here. These are all pretty much the same. You changed the background, but I'm not seeing varying viewpoints. I'm not seeing different ways. I'm not seeing different sizes of the character besides like one's a little more zoomed in than the other one. Um, I think you actually went through some other variations. Maybe you didn't just put them on here though. We've got some good references for each one. Looks like you're using a sort of link style for Peter Pan. Using a zigzag pattern here, we have a better idea of what you're thinking. This rendering. Okay. Oh yeah, you have some different arrangements down here. We have some values here. Different colors. Okay, and more background sci-fi. There is some good elements going on here, but it's a little unfocused. I feel like we've got a variety of different ideas all kind of mashed together, but then what we need to do is get that and figure out what that new thing is, and rebalance some stuff in order to get the most out of it. I'm gonna let you lead on this one. I mean, I have some ideas, but is anything hit you first, Nito, about this?
Yes. Well, upon the first time I looked at this, I think just the confusion, the stuff that comes to me is the values that you've chosen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's just because I see the same values that you're using in the background in the foreground as well.
Yeah.
So that might be why it's getting a little flat and like hard for me to understand upon first glance. But um, after looking at it a little bit longer, I actually quite like the idea of it. I like it with the because it's bringing in some of that magicalness of it with the floating ships and such from Peter Pan. My first thought would I think the reason why it's getting a little flat to me it's because it's the same width all the way down. It does get smaller and thinner.
Mm-hmm.
Path is taken in itself is just trying to squish itself right in between these two big middle ground objects,
Yeah.
which are the ships. I think just having those swooping curves overlap behind these big ships could make it seem not so sandwiched in, um, per se. Or maybe going with the spiral that's a little bit more whimsical from the composition number three. Um, and another just tiny point, just because it jumped out to me is when you see in the foreground the feet, Alice's foot with Bagheera's foot. For some reason, to me, it's reading like
Their feet are right behind each other.
yeah, so maybe just but I think it would be a quick fix just to like scooch one of them over.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that big of a deal, but it would be a little bit of a like it's grabbing too much attention to itself, whereas it should not be grabbing too much attention.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, my main point was about the this winding path that's like squished right between um these ships.
Yeah, let's talk about that. A couple
Yeah.
of things to note here. And one of the reasons that you're getting it is that you've kind of got the inverse of what you normally want to do. In order to tell distance, thing is, you did it up here, and I'm not sure why you didn't do it there, is you want it wide at the bottom and narrow at the top,
Yeah.
right? And you've got this. So the biggest movement happens there at the bottom, smaller here, smallest up there. But we almost have the inverse here that actually gets wider as it goes up. And you have little movements at the bottom and big movements at the top. So it throws off the sense of distance. And also, if there is this much distance between this one, that much distance there, and that much distance there, this needs to be getting a lot tighter. Like it would be going that sort of thing, right? Even if it was spreading out. But beyond that, let's talk about kind of the size and general arrangement of the scene. And that also goes into the values. So looking at what you have down here as references, let me point out a couple of things that might get you closer to what your references and your directions are, because I think that's where you're trying to go. Notice the size of the different elements in relation to each other and where they're located. So this one, small characters. If you look at the size of them, right? They're quite small in this scene. And then most of the scene is dominated with that background and that main background figure there. Similar thing here, the main character is actually quite small. Most of it is dominated by the background, and instead of the character being there, the logo and the title actually most. Let's go over here to these other ones on the right side. Again, small character, basically silhouetted, right? And these over here, kind of the same way, silhouetted, almost silhouetted. You got some pop of color there. Over here, basically silhouetted. Most of the background is that most of the scene is the background. Over here it's similar, not necessarily the same kind of silhouette, but here, same kind of foreground, but fairly small. And then most of the scene is the background. And then it doesn't, I guess this one probably had a title or something. I don't know why it's all blank. But it would have room for an element there. And here is where it's kind of getting divided, where basically there's the lower scene, and then there's the upper scene, and neither one really dominates the other, and especially if you put the title down here. So, what could we do? Well, in order to get closer to your references, I'd say that we could probably make these guys half that size, and then really play up the background. And for that, we could be looking at doing a couple of things. Let's actually throw a white layer over this. So following your sort of guide there, maybe we have the foreground, whatever the ship is that they're standing on. Then you have the characters, and the characters don't reach halfway. They all stop maybe 30-40% of the way up. So maybe you have them like that. And then this is all background. And this is where we can have a lot more distance. Here they've got the horizon going just across that guy's head. I think in this case, you could probably do better to actually put the horizon a little... Either you need to go up here, you don't want to put it right across his head, or it needs to be a little lower like that. Well, say you put it up here. Then we could have a really big key door, right? You could have that big key door up here. And then you could have the path. It can be like a yellow brick road kind of style, right? And you could have it kind of doing this, leading up to it, right? And then you get your ships. And we want to have some varying sizes, like maybe one ship is here in the foreground. And it's big, right? I mean, ships are big. So it's way up there. And then you've got smaller ship, smaller ship. And then this is where you have all the stuff going on. We have a variety of different sizes. And it's obvious this is about the scene. It's not really about the characters as much. Or we need to kind of change it up and follow what you were saying is if we keep this composition, what we want to do is probably shove this ship off. So you have more room there. We probably want to shove this ship off more so you have room over there. And then we want to put the key door down here probably. Make it bigger. We don't have to follow any real size, right? And then you still want this thing to be winding out so that it's getting bigger and bigger and wider until it gets to us. Approaching it like that, looking at those references, what is your thoughts here about that sort of recomposition?
Yes. Yeah. Mostly when you were submitting into the references, I think a big takeaway from it is don't go half and half.
Mm-hmm.
Commit to being either the image is all about the journey, the adventure ahead, the epic amounts of, magic and adventure ahead, or more about sort of the characters and their expressions and where they're going. I
Mm-hmm.
think especially because if you're just going to silhouette them and you're going to have their backs to
Yeah.
us, I think that having them so big in the canvas, having their backs to us, kind of doesn't attribute too much to the adventure and sort of
Yeah.
having people be like, "Oh, these characters are like if you had them looking at us, then perhaps it would be okay to have them that
Mm-hmm.
big because you could relate." Um, I think that yes, shifting around something could definitely help with the composition, and I think also, yeah, again, committing to either one or the other, having the space, this galaxy and the magicalness of it take over, or shift the characters around or do something with them so that it would warrant them being so big in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, the previous image where it's all about the characters falling through space and we can see their faces, their expressions. Um, One thing about going this direction that is currently on the stream, having them smaller and the background take more space. Um, what would you think about sort of having them instead of the three of them being just standing there looking ahead, maybe showing that one of them more adventurous, maybe perhaps Peter Pan or something, already embarking in the path or something of the sort, having them interacting already, walking into it, sort of sort of to show leading them like they're making their way to this door. What do you think about something like that, like
How did I
showing
say
more
that
of their
exactly?
personalities, like, oh, one of
Show
them
the
is
back of the
already.
heroes as they look ahead at the landscape of pirate ships hanging in space before a
Oh.
star field. Rope bridges and gangplanks stretch before the ships. Various lanterns are lit on the ships, which cast light across the decks. In the far distance floats a massive golden door in the shape of a keyhole. I mean, there's a little play there, but
Hmm. Maybe
yeah,
too far
I
away.
instead of being completely static, I'm with you. I'd probably have one of them more ahead, maybe not just all in a line.
Yeah,
Um,
just like
I
interacting with
yeah,
it,
I think
going.
I could almost see like one of them turning to like maybe Peter's ahead, but he's turning to look a little sideways over at
Yeah,
Alice, be like, "You ready?"
let's.
You
Yeah,
know, and you've got that sort of thing going
it's.
on.
Yeah,
You get this at least a side view of one of the characters' faces.
yeah.
Um, but hooray, I'm gonna go with that now. Uh, what Nito just said earlier though is really important, and this goes for everyone else, and I do mention it during the classes somewhere.
Yeah,
At what point? Which is if you're not going to be featuring the characters by really showing and dedicating the image to them, then you can show them by the back. That way you're suggesting them, but not explicitly stating what they look like. And that's what this direction is. And if you're doing that, then it doesn't really matter if they're very big. Now, I say
Yeah.
multiple times fill the frame with the content, but that doesn't mean fill the frame with the characters. In this case, the content is what you just said, Nito. It is the journey that they're about to take. It is this place that they're about to go into. And that is the subject. So that's what we want to fill the scene with. In this case, we are actually getting almost a first person. We're almost here to see what they see, not to meet them, but to see what they see. We're backing off a little bit so that they're a little smaller, that we get the grand vista of the journey. Okay, now moving to values. We're taking more time because we just got 3 submissions here.
Yes.
Important thing with the values is think in terms of planes. And this is probably going to be the simplest thing that you can do. Let's make a new layer, fill that with white, just set that to colors so that it matches everything up. Now let's take a look at some of the values of your references. This one mainly uses color up here, so it doesn't apply as much. I mean, you can still make it out. Personally, if it was me, I would have handled that a little different because you don't have enough value there. This one's working pretty well. You can see that background values are all a bit lighter. All the darks have been lightened, but the lights stay about the same. Over here on the right, the bottom right, we can look at these. Particularly notice this one here with the character and the floating rocks going in the background. Very dark on the floor. But then as it goes back, it gets a bit lighter. You can tell the planes of the image. Even here with the spiral sky, you can see how it has that sense of distance with the atmosphere. We need something like that. Now, how it's going to work on yours could change. Maybe the door is bright. Maybe the door is dark. It can be a dark golden door with a lot of light coming out from around it, and it would show up that way. Or maybe the background around it is more mid-tones and it's almost gleaming bright, gold, and so it kind of pops out by being lighter. But it needs to be one or the other, and then we need to play the values in a planes coming up. Right now, these are all kind of chosen arbitrarily. So think in terms of distance. It's probably going to be getting light in the foreground and dark as it goes back, or it's going to be dark in the foreground and get light as it goes back. One or the other is going to be really important. And then once you have that value study and you figure out which value study is working, which value scheme is working, that's the one that you then do color arrangements of. That's not really how I set it up in the class. I was exampling some other things in the class, but that's what we need to do here, because right now your value studies and your color studies don't really match. You kind of just did whatever you want with the values and did whatever you want with the colors, but those two need to correspond. If you look at your references, this is another place. This is why you have references. This is why you look at this stuff to learn these things, to pick out fragments of what's working, why is it working, how are they handling things. You notice the limit of the palette. Even in this one down here, I'm not sure who did this. Is that James Jeans? Maybe. Even in this one, you've got blue and red and orange and brown, but it's all harmonized. Why? Because none of it's at 100%. And if you lower the saturation of a color a little bit, like I talk about, that all colors harmonize more the more that they're desaturated. So if you bring it off of 100%, see, it's at like 55% saturation. Even the red, not 100%, right? And it's about the brightest thing on there. So if you can desaturate them a little bit, you can play with a lot more colors and they'll still be harmonious. But I don't think you need a lot of colors. Look at this scene with the samurai lady. Was that Mulan? Basically, it's similar colors with a pop of red. This one is similar colors of blue grays with pops of red. This one is blues with a pop of red. We've seen a theme here. Over here, greens with black. Basically just greens. This one, mainly browns with the yellow light. We More colors doesn't necessarily mean better. So it'd be better to have, I think, most things in whatever your star field color is. We're probably running blues, violets, or some sort of greens. And then you have that bright golden color of the door there in the background, and that would be kind of your offset color. And that same golden color of the door could be used in the lanterns on the ships. So there'd be pops of that same color throughout the scene, or maybe there's some stars that have that same sort of color. So it's not a one off, but most of it is there on the golden door. About the values and colors, any thoughts you want to put out there, Nito?
Yes, and I kind of did talk about this a little bit at the beginning, which I probably should have kept it towards this part of the critique. Um, the the I think the main problem with the values that you already had, Jorge, was that you were using the same values for the background as the
Mm-hmm.
foreground almost. Like the color of the value of Bagheera is almost the same as what's in the background, which kind of throws off your idea of depth and all these different
Yeah.
things. So, and again, looking at the references and such, you can have a dark background, but most of the time, if you color pick it, it's much lighter than you think and you perceive it to
Yes.
be. So don't be afraid to have this atmospheric perspective. Don't be afraid to lower the contrast of the background, thinking, oh, my background is a galaxy and the galaxy needs to be dark, dark,
Mm-hmm.
dark black. And it's like, no, most of the time you perceive it as super dark because of the values that are surrounding it. Um, so try it out, look at some of your references, look at some artists that may have done some sort of galaxy on their backgrounds or night sky, and try and color pick it as an experiment. You'll see that they're, I guarantee you, 99% of the time they're going to be lighter than you think they are.
Yes.
um so that would be my main thing for sort of trying to, because I feel like you do want to have this background be dark and sort of like a galaxy-ish sky. So don't be afraid of lowering the contrast of it. It will, I guarantee you, it will still look dark,
Yeah.
if you play your cards right.
Now he
Uh
has that little example over there on the left side, and it
yeah,
has that big owl creature.
and it
Uh,
still
that
reads
night
as a
sky is
dark
just
background.
blue. Yeah.
Yeah, still, it's even when you're putting it in color and not just grayscale, it does still read. It doesn't read as a daytime, doesn't read as, anything different. So don't be afraid, it's still going to look like they're going into this galaxy dark sky or what have you. Now, uh again, on the values, again, this is the thing I say a lot, is be deliberate with things.
Mm-hmm.
Before, I also said be deliberate with what your focal point is with, are we relating more to characters or the background? Now I'm going to say it again but differently. Be deliberate with where you place your contrast. And I'm pretty sure you've spoken about this before, Clint, and it's
Yeah.
what you want to highlight is that's where the most contrast is going to be. So here Clint is demonstrating it with this door, this portal to another world in the background. It's contrasting with what's around it, just as like the foreground is also contrasting with the background, but he's choosing it deliberately, like, hey, I'm going to grab your attention to where they're going. And the second point of, in the scale of, okay, the most contrast is where they're going, the secondary point of most contrast is who they are, so the foreground, and then whatever's in the middle can sort of scale down and up as you go back into the perspective, but you're choosing where that's going. Right now, I feel like you have the same amount of contrast for the whole image. Um,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like, where do we look? Where are they going? Who are they? It's making it easier and more accessible to the viewer to be like, oh, this is where they want me to look. And then once I've looked there, I can look around and see the other details and other parts of the image. Um, uh, Now, something that ties with the values to a certain extent, the colors. Clint worded it very beautifully there is you don't have to go as colorful, just as I was saying, you don't have to go as dark as you think it is. Most of the time is lighter. The same is with the colors. Most of the time the colors aren't as saturated as you perceive them to be.
Yeah.
It's just because of the relative colors and things that are around it. So, if you do want to keep going with this sort of super colorful thing, which I understand you might make as an artistic decision, because I also see it, like, for example, in Alice in Wonderland, there's some scenes that are quite colorful.
Hmm.
Um, Even see it on there on the movie is it's still very controlled. They're showing you they're purposely grabbing certain aspects, like some of the flowers in the Enchanted Garden are more bright and more saturated than others. Is not the same amount of saturation all around.
Yeah.
So again, you could use this again, purposely choosing where to put things. Be okay, where am I going to have my most saturated parts? What am I going to grab your attention with? And you could be like, hey, maybe the path moving up has some things that are a little bit more saturated because it's some sort of magic, or the lanterns popping in at different parts of the boats are going to be the ones with saturation, but you choose it. The rest can go a little bit more calm and more down with the saturation. um what do you think about that, Clint? Just purposely choosing where to put these
Yes.
things. I think that's a key thing.
Yeah. For this one, I think that your comment and observation that we do have a tendency to be very basic in the way that we think about values. Oh, it's a
Mm.
star-filled background equals black.
Black with
Well,
white stars.
yeah, I mean, realistically, when you look in the night sky, that's what you see. But that doesn't work illustratively. So we need to bring it up. But that also brings in the possibility of, yeah, it's space, but this is fairy tale, so obviously there's air. Um, which
Yeah.
means that we can have atmospheric perspective, right? We can have atmosphere, fog. Not only just fog, but heck, put clouds in there.
Yeah.
Clouds would be really, really great for creating more depth, and for having some of the ships coming out of the clouds and some of them disappearing into the clouds. Maybe those clouds coming out from around the door. Maybe they're circling around the key door. Uh, and these can all give you some other values to play with. Like if you had, you can have this sort of thing, you can have this sort of thing, you can have some of this sort of thing, and have the clouds just going through across the star field, and then allow that haze of distance to give you more of those midtones, and that the glow of the brightness of the gold can actually just filter out and create this magical, golden haze around it. That's okay. We don't have to be super literal with an illustration like this. Okay, one other one we're going to take a look at. It is Jerome. Jerome has a couple of comments. We'll take a look at that first. It says, thanks for reviewing my work. Hey, glad to have you part of the challenge. The idea is that there is a lit room behind the gigantic keyhole. I think that could be cool. I hope it's readable enough. 3 questions. Is it okay to suggest other doors? Yeah, I'm okay with that. That's fine. I like the main concept from afar, and I feel it begins well somehow. Yeah, I think the initial idea, the direction is working. I want to talk about how to get that idea and make it better, because I think the idea as a kernel is good. Might want to rework the shapes because it's getting way too stiff. Yeah, I feel like maybe some of your earlier concepts actually had a little more life to them, so we'll probably bring back some of those ideas. Also, as the progress in the image, I usually find things new or a new way to illustrate the main concept, but it usually ends up changing. They're like happy accidents that I want to include. Do you find yourself in the same situation, or do you stick to your main concept until the end? Well, it's both, and by experience, you kind of have to sort out which is which. When do you need to stick to your guide, and when do you allow yourself to detour in order to kind of assimilate a new idea, an unexpected good idea? and you don't want to really change the core of the image that undermines anything that was like the basic value scheme, the basic color scheme, the overall concept. But if you think, oh, well, if I add this element here or I add this extra light, that sort of thing, absolutely. You want to go with that as it goes. Okay, on this image, we've got a lot of iterations. We have like keyhole concepts on the upper left, playing around with a bunch of different compositions. This is what I like to see. This is a good way to approach it. We've got differing levels of where the camera is placed, high, low, kind of from a first person point of view, third person point of view. Everything's angled in different ways. So this is all cool. I like this, and it's a good way to run through the iterations. Composition, we got some art direction references here. These are really lovely. I think if you can get anything like these styles or these sort of renderings, they would work out really well. We've got some more color studies over here. And I guess that's yours. I guess that was playing around with it. Okay. Looks like you were going with this idea for a while. Okay. And then we got over to this one. I initially have a pretty good feeling to this one. I think that it's got a lot of nice things going on with it. My main thing here is we're probably losing the characters a little too much. And we may be able to double down on some of the things that are working. So what was your initial thoughts on this one?
Yeah, well, initial thoughts, I mean, I don't think it was required to have color on by this point, but I think the
Mm-hmm.
colors that you're choosing are quite effective.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say I have no problems with that, to be honest. But uh, I do agree with what you're saying, Jerome and Clint as well. It is getting a little stiff,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that could be solved, quite frankly, just by moving things around and maybe redrawing, but just a couple of things. My main thing here, which I'd have to talk to you a bit more about, Clint, would be if this is for a book. Um, wouldn't the title or the name of the author or what have you, wouldn't that just obscure either the top or the bottom? Because I was gonna
Yeah,
say
I'm not sure
these
where he's putting the title.
Yeah, because what I was gonna say is, I think that needs to be put into account because you have things going on both at the top and at the bottom, and the center has a lot of free room to it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which I think it could work if you're putting the title at the top. Just maybe those ships or those things at the top, you could sort of lower them down ever so,
Mm-hmm.
uh, just so that it wouldn't get so lost to whatever is going on top of it. Because I think it would be a little bit of a waste to just cover up uh, these silhouettes and things at the top. But maybe it could work. That would be more on your experience, Clint. What you do for a book. But yeah, just quickly though, on the different compositions that you've done and then carried over to the color iterations, Jerome. I actually quite like number two
Mm-hmm.
in the little ones. I quite like the dynamics of it. We're looking up number yeah, we're looking up at it. We see this sort of interesting angle of these ships going into this massive keyhole, and I think there it's really well sort of utilized. The space is really well utilized to a certain extent. Um, and then I like that you carried that over a little bit towards in the color compositions. I think that's the one that you were using, Jerome, for the color compositions.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, I quite like how it's working on the top left. You've just circled it, yes. For some reason, that one is catching more of my attention than the one you've chosen in the middle. Um,
Yeah, that was going to be one of my points as well.
yeah,
That
it's working so well, I
I
think.
like the additional tones that he does have in the
Yeah,
larger one. We've got the
yeah,
addition of some of those nice violets in there, which is nice. Uh, but the characters are getting so small, they're so spaced out, and there really isn't a reason that we shouldn't get those a little bigger and a little closer to us. They can remain largely silhouetted,
Yeah.
and we don't necessarily need to see their faces, but yeah, we can definitely get them. I have a more positive emotional kind of feel off of that version of it. Let's
Yes,
see,
I
even
agree.
number, see, was it 22 on the far right on the compositions? It's got like a
Yeah.
different shape of door. Let's see, I was
It's a
looking at the,
variation on two, I think. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. There's something about this looking up that's also selling me the magical aspect of it and like the
Mm-hmm.
epic adventure to follow. It's just yeah, it's giving me more depth. It's giving me more more action without the characters having to be involved in action. Um,
Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna say, Jerome, that this is a stronger concept, and maybe you just kind of second guessed yourself. But let's say that we're going to go back to something like this, or at least a medium between the two. If you want to find
yeah.
a variation, I'm fine with that. Uh, my main thought here, that I'm seeing on a couple of these, at least on the variation of based on two, is the lack of overlapping. And I talk about this in the class, which is having a buffer around everything. That
Mm.
Alice doesn't overlap anything in the background. Peter doesn't overlap anything. Bagheera doesn't overlap anything, and none of the ships overlap anything. Well, besides the key door, but it's huge, so everybody overlaps it. But we could get a better sense of the depth by having, her overlapping part of him, or Bagheera coming around maybe this way, so that you've got the three of them, uh, part of his tail is overlapping part of hers, so that we get a little sense of depth with that. Um, and then can there be a bigger ship in the foreground blocking or overlapping a little bit another ship? I just want to stay away from the buffer area around everything, because it ends up making something feel flat. Uh, because it's like things in the distance are interacting with things in the foreground. As far as dealing with that issue, any other thoughts on kind of how to handle that with the composition, or would you repose things?
Yeah, for some reason I do like the posing in the foreground though, and it doesn't bother me as much just because I don't know they're doing a really nice sort of just juxtapose to the angle at the top with the ships. So
Mm-hmm.
they're sort of I like that to a certain extent. So I think the overlap could be more on this mid ground on these little ships
Yeah.
perhaps. Again, it's just a thing of sort of playing around with it and just iterating with it. I mean, it's just a sketch for now, so it's even easier. Maybe yeah, adding a third big ship sort of at the bottom of some sort, or introducing some element that it's not too much though. Maybe again some clouds to a certain extent, um, or did it specify in the brief that you needed some sort of a pathway or no? Or was
This
that
one
an
did
addition to
have a
uncover?
pathway, but
Okay,
that was
it would
kind
be
of a
a little
more
weird.
minor thing. He's
Okay,
using other elements to sort of convey that, and that's
yeah.
fine. I
I could ooh, you know what could be sorry. Is that supposed to be Peter Pan in the middle? The tiny little Peter
Yes, I
Pan.
assume so. Can you
Did
hear
my
me?
internet die?
I think I
Yes.
lost about 10 seconds there if you want to go
Oh,
back.
sorry. Hopefully this I'll say it again just in case the stream didn't catch it. Because you have Peter Pan tiny right there as well. He's not touching anything. I
Hmm.
think maybe grabbing him because he might get a little lost. He's the same size as the little ships in the background.
Yeah.
So maybe grabbing him, pulling him just ever so forward, more to the left, a little bit bigger, just a little bit. Just don't
Hmm.
get too crazy with it because he's gonna then look like a giant, right? Make him a little bit bigger, more to the left, having him facing us, which is kind of what you were talking about before, Clint. Have one of them facing us. He's sort of being like, "Hey, let's go," and he's
Hmm.
flying away, right? He's like, "Hey, let's go, we gotta catch up or something." Um, then you could use him as an overlapping. Bagheera could overlap sort of the bottom half of him, and the top half of Peter could be overlapping the ships in the background.
Yeah.
I think that could be a good place to start on the sort of iterations for
I do
this
want to
composition.
pause here. I was just looking at the chat.
Yes.
Yoki, I think you were asking about the challenges.
Yes.
The ticket, if you are interested in actually getting in this challenge, I didn't have time to do it earlier. The tickets for this challenge are still on sale. But what I'm going to do, and I meant to do it earlier, is the tickets are going to be put at half price if somebody
Mhm.
wants to join in right now and get the feedback in 2 weeks.
Oh, right.
And that way, if you still want to get in and do get a feedback, essentially you would be getting feedback on the concept that you sent in or whatever you could get done in that time.
Yeah.
So because you're getting one feedback, I put the tickets at half price if people still want to pick one up on a late. So if you want to keep an eye on that, I'll try to make that change this afternoon if you want to jump in. Okay,
Yeah,
I
I think
was,
they found the Gumroad already, so it
yeah,
would be there, right, Clint? The
yeah, it should
ticket.
still be out there.
Yeah, there you
I'm
go.
liking like this. What you're talking about is good. I do like the guidelines that they're putting in here with the key. I feel like perhaps that you just kind of eyeballed that. Our perspective lines are probably going to be a little flatter at the bottom. Then we're going to be getting the steeper angles as it goes up. And then make sure that we have plenty of this upward angle. We're having a lot of perspective going on here. So having lots of perspective with this. And that's probably going to flatten off more like this. If it were me, I'd be thinking about a little bit different layout. Let's see. Thinking about maybe putting the title down there. Then what I would probably do, I like pushing the foreground character really big in that they're closer to the camera. So that Alice essentially would be not as high as that. You don't want to have their heads on the same level. But Alice would be kind of like this, right? And she's here looking that way. Here coming off. Then you have like Bagheera's tail or something coming around, and then you have Bagheera like over here. And the title kind of goes across Bagheera. And then you have Peter out here. I don't know that you want to put Peter right in front of the door because it almost makes it feel like he's at the distance of the door because he's flying.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. Um, in that case, if we actually put Bagheera's head more here, we kind of have the back view of Bagheera back kind of doing this sort of thing. Then we can actually have Peter more here, and what you say, like part of him is overlapping the door and part of him is not.
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea maybe he's kind of curving this way and he's turning to look at her like here, and his hand can be pointing, his hands up like, fuck.
Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah,
We
and
found it.
he's holding his rapier over here to the side. Then I still love the ship thing. The ships are great. I don't think that we need that ship there. The big one on the right side. If we have Alice there, that's going to get crazy.
Yeah.
But we still want a lot of the ships doing this. We still want big ship up here, big ship here. We can still have some ships here. And I like the idea that it's a door. It's not exactly what I wrote, but I would say put a nice gold frame, as you're kind of indicating here. Put the gold ornamentation around the giant key door. And then, yeah, let that just go into this golden light, whatever this other place is, clouds and stuff. I would be looking at having like clouds pulling in or out of it. So they're kind of wrapping around the edges of the keyhole and being almost like a vacuum. It's kind of sucking, pulling the clouds in like that. And this is all going to be these nice action lines that sort of pull you to that focal point. And we still want some of the silhouettes of a couple of the ships going in through the door. That's how I do it. I think that's better because we have like
Yeah.
really large character of Bagheera right there in the front. We're basically just seeing his back, his shoulders, the back of his head. You can tell it's a leopard. You don't need a lot.
Yeah.
And then you're not getting the full thing of Alice. You're maybe getting down kind of to the knees. Maybe that. You have the dress blowing there. She's got to be wearing that top hat. Or she's holding the top hat, whatever it is. It can be, she can be having it at her side if she wants to.
Yeah.
Um, but then they're all differing sizes. We got the distance going in there. Um, yeah.
It's pulling you in. It's almost as if you're there with them and it's like, let's go, we found it. We gotta go
Mm-hmm.
through this before it closes or something of the sort. I like that a lot, yeah. And it's still playing off of the concept, the original concept, which I think already had something going on for it. So
Yeah, and if he wants to fit in some of the broken ships down there at the bottom, I think that's still fine. Or if you want to play with just the smoky, foggy effects,
mm,
beautiful photos. Art down here with like the blue clouds and the golden light out of the tower. If you want to have just some mass sticking up that have some Jolly Roger flag on it, and then the clouds are just kind of snaking around them, and that's all just minor elements at the bottom. You could do that. Otherwise, just layers of clouds probably work. But yeah, I would stick with that mainly blue, gold color scheme.
yeah.
That's beautiful. So I yeah, stay with that. If you want to branch out and having a little more of like you have like cyan over here, that's fine. If you want to go some warmer oranges in it, yeah, that's fine too.
Yeah. Oh, what did you think, Clint, like when with the new composition or going for something like that? Because I was also seeing it a little in the big piece that was presented to us by Jerome. Is
Hmm.
this you kind of want to sell this sort of this key door, this portal to another place, because it's spewing out all this light, right?
Hmm.
Um, it would affect because it's kind of implied that the light is almost affecting the little ships that are closer to it.
Hmm.
Wouldn't you say that it would also affect the bigger ships at the top as well? Like they would get underlit sort of to
Yeah, we could actually play with color here for just a
yeah,
second.
it
Let's
would
see.
I think it would I don't know, I think it would also bring it because the colors that Jerome already has, they're working really well, like we've said.
Hmm.
So just sort of incorporating them into it and having especially in this new one where the ships are getting closer, almost also going through the door, really playing off of with that golden light affecting them. I
Oh,
think could
wrong
also
one.
really like catch catch your attention because again this is like the purpose of this and I think you also always have to keep it in mind because treat it as a commission or something. The purpose of this is to be a book cover, so you want it to like look the part, right?
Hmm.
What would be your thing when you work on a book project? Would be like, I want it to catch the attention of people at the bookstore, right? But also at the same time, you want it to showcase the story or the possibility of what's inside the book.
Yeah, book covers are kind of interesting because it doesn't even need to be a literal scene. Now, I was thinking that
Yeah,
this would probably be an actual scene at some point in the story, but
yeah,
rather than being completely accurate, you're just trying to get their imagination. You're trying to get their
yeah.
curiosity.
You're not
And
spoiling.
uh, okay,
Oh, those colors are nice.
yeah. So you've got the key door, which is mainly running in that nice golden tone. Then you're going to have them there in the foreground. Frankly, they can be pretty dark. Bagheera's black leopard anyway. To get that golden light coming out, we really want to have the light kind of filtering out there to that left side. If you're going with this, I'm not saying use this exact
Yeah,
version.
Just take it as a
yeah.
inspiration point or something that could be.
And then on the right side, it wouldn't be as much. There might be like a little halo amount there. But the ships could be kind of either. Like the ships could have kind of the light hitting them, and the ones in overlapping the darker area, they could probably be lighter. So they show up because they're being lit. But the ones that are already over the lit areas, they show up because they're being silhouetted. They're dark against the sky, so it sort of
Yeah.
inverses as it goes in. Right. And then Peter could almost be both. He's probably going to be more silhouetted than he would be. He might have a little edge light on him. But they could all
Yeah.
have a little edge light if you edge light.
Yeah, it's always nice. Yeah, with the edge light, it could make Alice just jump up a little bit more.
Then we can have that star field back there, and don't want to make the scars just white. Use a really, really pure lighter tone like a cyan, like I'm using here.
Yeah.
Give you good pops of color in there, interplay with the rest of it. If you want to have some clouds, you could have some clouds. Clouds would actually get it a little bit darker down there and diffuse it, keep it being too sharp. Everything. And if you can even maybe a little atmosphere even between the two of them. Then we're saying that there is idle down here somewhere. Yeah, that would be my thoughts. So
Yeah.
but so much of the work you've already done, like most of the work. You've answered
Yeah.
most of those questions about how to handle this, what to put in there, the idea of allowing it to be a door, letting the ships kind of be crossing into that. I think that works really well, and it's exactly the sort of thing that you want to be like, where are they going? I want to go with them.
Yeah. It gives off that magical adventure feel
Hmm.
that sort of it's inviting you to read it and go with them. Um, just quickly, was it Jerome that was asking? I can't really read the text. Was it him that they were asking about sort of changing things drastically in the process that we covered a little
Yeah,
bit?
he says I usually find new things or a new way to illustrate the main concept, but he usually
Mm,
ends up changing a lot sometimes. Like there was too much
yeah.
happy accidents. Um,
I don't know. I would like to speak on it just a little bit.
yeah.
It's like, because, for example, right now the critique, it's the new direction that we're proposing, keyword proposing,
Hmm.
not forcing upon you. Um, it is a big change. It is going back to one of the original concepts, but it is a big change towards what you're currently presenting to us, Jerome. So if you were to do something like that, Clint, I mean, I think you've said it before. It's always just checking in, right? If you were to be the art director or something, I think that to a certain extent you're allowed to want to change things, certain extent,
Hmm.
very specific. But just sort of touch base, right? If it's going to be a
Yeah.
big change, like if you had shown this to your art director and they were like, yes, we can go forwards with this and this, and then a couple of days later, like, oh, now I want to do this new concept that's changing the whole composition, you'd have to check in with them.
Yeah,
Am I correct?
and usually an art director in a project is happy to take a new direction if it's a
Mm.
better direction, if it doesn't mess with the schedule. If
Oh,
it is in between pushing the deadline and getting a better possible direction, they're going to choose deadline. And that's usually where I find that the difference is. I can come to my art director early on and say, hey, got this idea. I think this might be a better way to do the same sort of thing. Or, hey, I was working on this, but then I realized, dude, there is so much better way to do this. Do I have time to, make this change? And they say, well, how long is that going to take? Well, it's take an extra 3 days. Uh,
yeah.
that's great, but we don't have an extra 3 days. So that would be kind of the breakdown of where that would play out, or how I've seen it play out a couple of times.
Mm, yeah. But just check in.
Yeah,
Because I
just
feel
check
like it
in,
would be
just ask.
worse if you just, even if it ends up being a best image, if you just, if a better image, if you change it up so much and then on the deadline you're like, hey, here's my completely different finished and rendered painting. Hope that's
Hmm.
okay. You know, it's better to sort of check in before that, um,
Yeah,
in case you're trying to train for
even if he
for.
didn't want to rework it as much and go with basically the same image,
Mm,
I would still get Alice bigger. I'd
yeah.
still get her kind of like this, and then put Bagheera bigger too, and then get Peter Pan big enough that we could see him there
Mm.
and actually
Like in
make out
the,
his pose.
yeah.
And I think that you're making the door bigger is better, and that lower angle is more interesting. This one has a much flatter angle, and I just don't think it is as interesting unless we can utilize the space more. Like here, one of my things, if you're going to go with this direction, this is one of my thoughts. Keep this in mind. Let's look at your references. Look at the ship one here. You've got this. You think it's an accident that those are all aligned in this pattern? Heck no. He knows what he's doing. Look down here. Look at this one. Think it's a pattern that these all do this? Heck no. What? They're all pointing you back at the focal point. But a problem here is that your current one doesn't do that. And that's one of the reasons you've got all of these in a completely random fashion. And we would need to get those to be doing something more consistent, more useful. And you've got both of those. So you're kind of making a diamond thing. But like if we got this, I'd say let's just modify this one for a second. Just for giggles.
Well, as you're doing that, I think we said this at the very beginning of this specific critique is on the color comps, the one in the top left. I think that would be a good compromise between the two, like the image that you're presenting right now and the one we just did on the left. It's almost like an in-between composition
Mm-hmm.
because it's still sort of this different, sort of more flatter angle, but it's got enough things going for it that are sort of also taking you through the image. The one, wait, which one? I mean, the one on the top left in the compositions, in the color compositions, um, could also work. Oh, like pointing up, sort of 3-point perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, I
So
see, I see.
now we've got all of these, and we can have all these sticks and stuff. That is where you want to put Mr. Alice. There. Want to put Pan off here, and then you can have like Bagheera more in the foreground. Or you can have Bagheera. I think it just gets complicated if you put the silhouette of Bagheera right next to her. You might not be able to work that out. Then you have ship here. Ships back. You have the kind of irradiating lines thing. Ships. You have a lot of midtones through here. This is what's going on. Got your warm tones reflected in the water down there. This way. Sorts of things. Have ship mass. That. Everything's going up towards the so that's kind of like getting the same thing, but it's utilizing more of it. Again, large shapes, medium shapes, smaller shapes. These are all going in a fashion that keeps a consistent pattern of radiating lines following the 3 point perspective looking up. You have the radiating pattern coming out from the door with all the ships following that. You have large ships, medium ships, smaller ships. We get one of the main characters, in this case, we're getting Alice. You're getting her nice and framed there. You could probably have more midtones from the glow of the door coming out that allows you to put some distance between Peter here, or Peter might be closer to platforms down here, jetties or whatever. Yep. Can the pathway be made out of light or golden ink? The golden brick road float off towards the door.
Yeah, that was Jorge in the chat asking that question from the previous critique.
I thought it was, yeah.
Also, Kyoki is also asking again, which I think would be very pertinent to answer here in the stream, is anybody who's doing this challenge, what do you think, Clint? Is 40 hours enough to make a good stab at this challenge for someone who has just started trying to learn fundamentals?
Yes and no. 40 hours is enough hours to like give something a really good shot. So if you told me you had 8 hours, I'd be like, it's probably not worth it. 40 hours is good. So I would also say if you're just learning the fundamentals, then just watch what your expectations are. Like Jerome here, he's probably been doing this a while. So have expectations that are right for your level. And that's how, if it's me and Nito again, or if Anna's back, whoever, we're always going to address whatever the next step is for your particular skill level. We're not going to be comparing you to anybody else or any of that. So yeah, if you think you can pull together 40 hours or somewhere around there, I'd say that that's enough to get a lot done. The main thing is make sure that you're watching through the class on Skillshare, because that is going to explain everything about the process. Just follow that process. The process, that is the workflow, is going to be doing most of the decision making for you because it's going to make you slow down and take each step and do what you need to do. That's what you see Jerome here. Jerome took the time to work out a dozen different concepts as far as the composition, worked out multiple value schemes. He found his good lighting reference, inspiration images. He found some subject references for the boats and stuff, and did his value studies, his color studies. These things all come together, and look what we got. We got a beautiful image, or what he's going to finish up to being a beautiful image, I'm sure. Anything you want to add to that? Do you have any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's mostly just a personal thing for you to be, okay, I want to do 40 hours and if it feels right to you, then commit just as much if like, oh, I'm working full time, I only have 4 hours a week to dedicate.
Mm-hmm.
That's also like that's also good. This is not a commission that you need a deadline for. This is kind of a practice for you can join in and you don't have to have a fully finished image by the time the last critique rolls around. It's just you do as much as you can with the time that you're given, and you're still going to get a critique up to the spot where you're going to be. You still get to
Mm-hmm.
ask questions. You still get to leave out of this whole experience having at least learned something, if not knowing where to go next, because Clint, Anna, and I, we can try and point you and okay, next, this is what you should focus on for the image. So if 40 hours is something that's working for you, Kyoki, and you're like, in 40 hours, I think I can finish the whole thing. Good, but again, you're saying you're learning, you're trying to start off with the fundamentals, Kyoki, which is great. It's fantastic. And using 40 hours for this could is definitely a wonderful learning experience. And but uh, I want to emphasize like you have just started trying to learn the fundamentals. If you go into this process, don't be alarmed if you have to take your time on certain
Mm-hmm.
parts of it. If you're, oh, for some reason I've gotten to the values and I'm still learning values, so it's going to take me out of those 40 hours, it's going to take me a chunk of time to
Yeah.
really get the values down.
I
There's
I think
nothing
you
wrong
bring
with
up
that.
a good point.
Yeah.
Um, if you're still earlier on, you're working on the fundamentals.
Yeah.
The goal here for you on this challenge for you would not be a finished image. The
Yeah.
goal would be what can I learn through this process? Because
Definitely.
this whole process will be new to you. A lot of the things are going to be new concepts to you. So you go at whatever pace you need to in order to, match up with what you're comfortable with. And if you don't ever reach colors, hey, I don't care. Nito doesn't care, right?
Yeah, we're still going to give you a
Yeah.
critique. We're still going to answer your questions and try and point you on how to resolve your problems and maybe point you into resources and things that you can do to continue on in the process. Again, it's really important to know that the deadline for this specific learning experience, and I call it learning experience for a reason, is not to sort of, it depends on the stage in your career that you're at, right? Because if you're already experiences, you go in and by the end you must have a finished piece and what have you for your portfolio. But
Mm-hmm.
again, the goal is different for different people, and you're still going to get something out of it. And it goes to say that if the final critique rolls around, you're not finished, but you show up, you've learned something, you ask your questions, you use this as an opportunity to learn, nothing is stopping you from after this going back and finishing it,
Oh,
or going
absolutely.
back and revisiting the prompt and doing it over, because I think that's also a wonderful learning experiences. Once you've gotten the feedback, maybe instead of keeping on until the end, you're like, okay, now I know what I should have done. Let's rewind and
Mm-hmm.
redo it on my own pace and sort of. So it's really hard to give you a specific answer on it, in my opinion, because I could tell you, yes, 40 hours you can do it, but maybe it goes down to the point and you're starting out, like Clint said, and it can get a little overwhelmed. Again, depends on the person. If you work well with saying, okay, I'm going to learn this in 40 hours, you might be the type of person that this works wonders for you, and it's like you actually learn it in 40 hours. But other people don't work that way, so think about it internally as well. If you can, Kyoki, be a little thoughtful of how you learn, how you handle these experiences, because then you kind of go in a little prepared to know your expectations are more aligned with how you actually function as a person or as an artist or as a student. Because I mean, if you go back and look at some of these playbacks of these streams, there's all sorts of artists in so many different points of their careers as artists.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I get like most of them, you can talk to them if you can reach them on the Discord. They get something out of it no matter what stage they're at. Um, and in the same in just one stream, we can get people from all sorts of stages. You get somebody that does a full on professional level finished image, and then the next person could be struggling with values and they're trying to learn values, and that's okay. And they get help just they get just as much help as the person that finished the image, say. Um, but maybe I'm just now just rambling over over and over about it. But yeah, I wouldn't be too stressed out about how much time to use, or do I do it? Do I don't not do it? Do these kinds of things?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, Marlon is saying, uh, "OMG, guys, thanks for that feedback. Another question: if I study plastic arts, can I improve my art skills? Even if plastic arts is more traditional." I think plastic arts, because it's a thing in Latin America, um, is more about just traditional art. Uh,
Plastic art?
we kind of, yeah, artes plásticas is a thing in Latin America, but it's more like traditional art and sort of doing sculpture and these different things. For
Oh,
if
okay.
you go to like an art school, like a traditional school, um, yeah. And I've been in the same situation, Marlo. I'm also from Latin America, and most of this, it's really hard to find a digital art or illustration course. It's more all about going into it and learning about art history and making sculptures and paintings and things. I think you can. I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Clint. But it's more. the short end of it for me is anything that you learn can relate back to art. That's the wonderful thing about art, I think. It's just
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you
there's
can
certainly
apply
some
anything
things
to
that
it.
are going to help more than
Yeah.
other. If you're just talking about
Oh, yeah.
traditional images, traditional piece.
Yeah, I think they're asking about if they go for like more of a traditional art school experience that's not digital. It's more about,
Oh yeah.
again, culture and things. It can
Um,
definitely be influential to you as a digital artist. You can learn a lot from it.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's where I came from. I
Yeah.
fully trained in all the traditional media before I ever picked up any kind of digital stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to learn there because one of the easiest things to happen is for people to start over relying on digital tricks to try to make up
Oh,
for a lack of understanding of fundamentals. And there's so little way to do that with a lot of traditional media. Um, you either know it or you don't.
yeah.
and and I think that that carries over, like you said. There's a lot of crossover between those. So if you can get out there and take a traditional drawing class, sculpture class, anything like that, or even taking a design class about how
Yeah.
to design product design, marketing design, any of that kind of stuff, translates over from one to the other eventually.
Yeah. No, it does, but I think the key here is you're studying these things that may not be exactly, fantasy illustration, right? But they're still
Hmm.
relating and overlapping to a certain extent. But I think that doing that, because this is what I've done, is I did some how we call plastic arts. I did some plastic arts, and then I moved over to graphic design, and I did a whole program of I have my degree per se in graphic design for like flyers and advertisement and these things,
Hmm.
right? But it's not exactly what I wanted to do. I want to be a fantasy illustrator. So then I supplemented these things and these other areas of art with actual sort of, again, looking on YouTube or looking into online courses and things that were directly what I wanted. So, and this happens a lot in Latin America again because you don't have these schools like we have here in the US now. So do the things that you're interested in, Marlon. Like go for your traditional classes if you're so inclined, and then go into online and find these resources for specific. You want to be a
Yeah.
fantasy artist, then also on top of it, go and take a course or watch some tutorials, investigate on your own time about these specific, narrowing it down to what you want to do, because otherwise you're just going to stay in the floating in space surrounded by all these different things that surround to art, but you're not narrowing down on like what you're interested in. So it's a balance. It's finding, it's it's finding your way through all these different options. But yeah, definitely check out online stuff if you're in Latin America. So if you're in Latin America and and you can speak and understand English, you have internet. I mean, I've done it. You can do it. If I've done it, you can do it too. Um, there's so many things, especially in English, that open up your opportunities to learning about these, like just swatches, right? It opens up a myriad of opportunities to actually narrow down on fantasy illustration or card art, concept art, or what have you, that you may not have access to back in Latin America.
Hmm.
Um, what do you think, Clint? Sorry, again,
No, no, I'm
rambling.
with you. Um,
Yeah,
get what you can in person if there's a place around there, and then, as
yeah,
most of us do at this point, like you say, you supplement any particular niche, topic, skill, or interest by what you can find online,
yeah.
and that can work well. Jerome says he's here. Well, Jerome, now
Oh,
that you're finally
welcome.
here, I think we're going to wrap up the stream. We've already been talking
Yeah,
about this
goodbye,
for half an
everybody.
hour.
See you next year. Just kidding.
Yeah, just a heads up, if you haven't caught the last stream or two where I was kind of talking about the schedule, this will be the last art challenge for 2020. Definitely, I wasn't even
Oh,
sure I'd
really?
be
Oh, no.
doing this one. Well,
Yeah.
because we're almost getting into Christmas, New Year's,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm going to be traveling, so in
It's
two
very
weeks
fun.
we will have the finals for this challenge, and then we will be picking up sometime in January. We'll see my schedule like. is like for that. I should be having a black and white color video. I've talked about that in the past, several years ago. I did a
Mm.
video on the topic. But there's a couple of points that I didn't hit on that needs to be talked about because there's a lot of
Oh,
people using this technique and they're having problems with it. So there's
is it
like,
The
hmm?
Nisa video where you go over the rules?
No, I talked about it on a piece, Lady Paradoxia for Legend of the Cryptids.
Oh,
And
I think I might know
uh,
what the video is.
yeah,
Okay,
so
sorry.
I was just thinking about it. There's like four different tips that I want to go over for this topic. And I have them written down, but I need to record and edit the video and stuff. But that might be going up next Friday because otherwise I don't really have a stream topic for next Friday. So I may just
Mm,
premiere a video at normal time. But it's almost 4, and I think we've had
yes.
a lot of good conversation. Nito, thanks for being able to join me today.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you for having me back and for letting me ramble on about these different things of being an artist and such. I hope we could help these folks watching and also just Jerome, I know you're here towards the end, but you can this is going to be uploaded, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you can go back and check on your critique, Jerome. Yeah, no
Yeah.
worries. He's saying sorry I couldn't be here on time, but it's
Hey,
okay.
no, that's why they're recorded.
Yeah.
And I think we addressed most of the stuff that you need to know there in the feedback. And if anybody wants to get the illustrating commissions, you can go check that out on Skillshare. 2 weeks free out there if you want to do that. And
Yeah.
that goes through the whole process of how to get an outline, how to take it to a finished image. And thanks so much for joining. And if you like the video, I always forget to say it, but please leave a like. YouTube
Yes.
algorithm loves that, and leave a comment if anything stood out to you, or just say, "Hey, I liked the video." That also YouTube loves, people that do that. It lets people know it's a good video. So,
Yes.
and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks if I don't, for some reason, see you sooner.
Yep.
And well, until then, keep drawing. Bye.
Take care, everybody.